how do you get to know somebody if you don't ask questions?
When you have a child, I think there's a rebirth that happens.
People say, well, how do you handle fighting and all that? And we look at each other and it's like, we don't really fight.
Hi, I'm Megan Rhodes.
I'm Julie Swanson.
That's my mom. And this is Kingdom Culture. Today, we are talking about a lot of different things. We'll see where the Holy Spirit wants to lead. But specifically, I wanted to bring my mom on to talk about parenting, motherhood, singleness, pursuing your calling. There's a bunch of things my mom could talk about. She's a very successful mom of 3 and been married for 35 years.
Almost 36.
Almost 36 to my dad, who we'll also have to have on because he's very fun and funny. Yesterday, he was rolling around on his knees on a random chair after church.
This is true.
That was hilarious. I need a picture of that. And his laughter.
Find the baby. Yeah.
He is the baby of the family. That is the thing.
He's the firstborn baby because he's a twin.
I don't know how that works. He's the first of twins, but the 5th out of 6th.
Correct.
So, and mom is basically the firstborn, which is also a good thing we could talk about. You've just been through a lot of stuff in your life. You've been through grief. You've been through losing your parents. You've been through losing a sister, a lot of things. So we'll see where the Lord wants to lead. Sound good?
Okay.
Also, mom and I are the same person. So that has been hard at times and now is really good. So, okay, why don't you start off telling people a little bit of your story, whatever you'd like to focus on. We already talked about you've been married for 35 years, you have 3 kids, but what else should people know about you?
I'm one of 4 girls, so a lot of estrogen in the house growing up. I was the second of 4 girls. Wonderful family, wonderful upbringing. Wouldn't have changed anything, small town girl. And then left to go explore the world, literally traveled all over the world.
Where? Where did you go?
Where didn't I go? Toured with a band all over the world from...
What kind of band?
You say rock, but in the 80s, it was like pop rock because it was new wave. MTV had just started. It was so... And we did originals and things like that too. So I was the only female traveling with all these guys. And we literally just, How old
were you when you did this? Like 21?
No.
25?
Well, that's a good question. Let me think about that.
Because you met Dad in 88? You got married in 89?
Correct.
So how many years before Dad were you living in LA?
This was before LA.
Okay, so before
LA.
I
was in LA 83 to 86, I think, because I was out there for the Olympics.
Mm-hmm. So then this
in
was
84. So this was 80 to 83.
So this was like early to mid 20s.
This was like 80s in their glory, the perm and the just everything, the leopard outfits and all of that.
Mom's never changed. She still rocks leopard.
I do. I like leopard.
And pink. It's where I get it from.
This is
true. It's genetically predisposed.
It is. You came out of the womb with
I really actually did. And now my daughter wears pink every day and people at church are starting to notice. Actually, somebody yesterday came up to me and she was like, Megan, I need to show you this purchase I made. And I was like, okay. And she's like, I bought myself pink shoes and you inspired me. And I was like, love it.
Somebody asked me, where's your leopard? It's like, well, see, it's the same thing.
It's pink or leopard.
Pink or leopard. It is.
So tell people a little bit about your professional background.
Yeah, so music's in my family. I started playing piano when I was 4. My grandma was my piano teacher. Amazing woman of God who my grandpa used to come over and pick me up in his pickup that smelled like, he was a mortician and had the furniture store, which my dad later took over, but he loved to fish. And so his old pickup truck always smelled like this, I don't even know how, like cheesy stuff that they use for bait for fish. And it was just something you'd get in the pickup and before I could obviously drive and smell like this cheesy bait that my grandpa used for fish. And he'd take us to our piano lessons. And then my grandma would, found out later, always had her hand on my back when I was playing, and she was silently praying in the Spirit over me because she was Spirit-filled. And I have her Bible today, and so I can get to see everything now. So, just how her relationship with what that was with the Lord and how meaningful. I mean, she was an avid reader, just an amazing woman of God, and who imparted things probably I don't even know, someday I'll get to know.
Yeah.
But
And she lived to be 100?
she lived to be 83.
But your other grandma lived to be 100.
My other grandma, yes. So I had strong matriarchs in
Very
the family.
true.
Very strong.
And then grandma was a school teacher till she had all of you, and grandpa owned the
Furniture store and funeral home. He bought it from my grandpa.
Yep. And when did he was a Navy medic in World War II.
Yep.
And there's a whole really cool story about that because he almost
should not be here.
He shouldn't be here because he was 6'3", and the ship he was supposed to go on, he couldn't go on because he was too tall, and that ship never came back.
Well,
right?
the main story that I remember is that at the last minute, they needed somebody that could type 70 or 80 words a minute. And so he raised his hand. He said he could.
Wow.
He couldn't type quite that many, but he was really good at it. And that was the Lord because, so they pulled him out, and that ship went out and didn't come back.
Crazy.
So talk about the Lord's hand on our family for a long time. I have another story with my piano grandma. She didn't drive, and she and my grandpa were like polar opposites. They met in college. So my grandparents were born in the 1800s.
And she went to college.
They both went to college.
Yeah, that's cool.
Think about that. So they met at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, in German class, right? So he, I think, majored in geology, which is wild. And here she is, music major. And they met in German class. She was kind of like always coming in last minute, dropped her books, and he picks her books up. And she was like actually older than him. And this is really funny. Just a side note. She didn't want people to know that she was older than my grandpa. So she put the same birth date down for both my dad and my dad's sister because she didn't want people to know. I was just like, I don't know. It was just a thing back then, I guess. So, and then they got married, and
how many kids do they have?
2. My dad had one older sister, Alice, and then my dad was.
And then your mom had.
There were 4 girls in her family, just like me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So walk us through. So you're raised. You had 3 sisters, and then walk us through kind of like your 20s. So you knew that you wanted to leave Nebraska, but you went to college. You were a music major, and then ventured out on your own. So what do you want people to know about kind of your self-discovery process of pursuing music and all of that, especially back in the 70s when, I mean, women certainly were doing things that the 60s had happened, right? But how did you, for the sake of this podcast, what was your relationship with the Lord like as you were finding yourself, and frankly, in a lot of dark places between the rock and roll scene, you traveled the world, and also LA, which is a very, very dark place. How did you, talk to us about your relationship with the Lord and just being in your 20s, being single, navigating relationships, all that.
Very interesting. When we were touring around the world, I always had people come up to me and tell me their life story. I mean, today, that happens all the time.
It's genetic.
It just, that I had the repairman that came to do my washing machine 2 days ago. He ended up staying. And Dad, we were rehearsing for songs on Sunday, and Dad got his guitar out and he goes, "Oh, guitar, whatever." And he pops his head in the kitchen. And so I said, he said, "Are you musicians?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, I'm a musician too." And I said, "What do you play?" And then like 45 minutes later, he's still there. And Dad is just like smiling, told me his life story. But anyway.
Your 20s?
My 20s. Rabbit, squirrel, whatever. No, I just, I've always loved the Lord. And so people have always told me their life story. And so it didn't matter if I was, playing a gig somewhere, people would come up to me and they would talk to me. I like to hide myself. I didn't mingle a whole lot. I would come out on stage. I don't know, that could be the introvert in me, but afterwards is usually when they would come up to me, or if I would go to get a glass of water or something. But I always felt connected to the Lord. From the time I was a little girl, I felt like I heard his voice. He would tell me things. I would dream things and they would come true. I always journaled. I started writing songs when I was little, but I always felt like he was there with me, even though I didn't know him to the depth, obviously, that I know him now, but I just knew he was there. And I knew he was guiding me. I knew he was protecting me. I mean, there's some things where I know he's protected me from, especially with the band touring, where we were in situations where he came through, I know. But even with the family, that's true. But through all of that, it wasn't easy to go to church because we were usually traveling. We'd play 6 days a week and we'd travel on Sundays. We'd pack up and we'd travel to the next place. So was I where I wanted to be at that time? Probably not.
And you're on the road for 3 years?
Yeah, 3 years. Never, just living out of a suitcase, basically. So if I had the chance and I was home, I would come and go to church. So it was basically just a relationship of, hey, let's talk, God, you know.
And now obviously there's the internet, there's YouTube.
Yeah, we had none of that.
There's so much more that you can access.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking back at that, like, is there anything that you would suggest, or is there anything that you would do differently? Or did you ever have like a dry season where you didn't feel like you were as, I don't want to say like faithful, but just like God felt distant? And what was like the turning point of kind of, whether it was after you got off the road or whatever, where like you really were able to dig in again and pursue him on the offensive rather than kind of like, you know, you pray when you can, but life is just chaotic for 3 years?
Yes. I was in a relationship that I shouldn't have been in. It was a toxic relationship. And probably during that time was when I should have been listening to the Lord and I wasn't. And so when that ended, I moved out to LA. And then unfortunately he followed me. And so we were,
Were you still together?
No, but then he followed me out there. And then stupidly, you know, I let him back in. And so it was after that ended, then he moved back. He lived in Chicago. And so there was time then that I really had to do some soul searching at that time.
What's your advice to people that maybe somebody's interested in them, maybe that person is really good looking, maybe they're in a season where they don't feel like, what would be your advice to somebody that maybe is in a similar position to what you were in, now having been through a relationship that on the back end, you're like, hey, this really bruised me in this way. Is this like, I had to come out of this hole, which my mom and I have very similar stories in this way. Like there were definitely some things we had to heal from making that bad decision. So what's your advice to people that are either before, in, or healing from that kind of a bad decision?
I would say just listen to the Holy Spirit. He's trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
All the time. 24/7, 365.
What if someone's saying, I can't hear him?
You can hear him. Some people call it the gut feeling. Some people say it, call it your knower. It's that thing that will not leave you.
Yeah, that's good.
That just keeps telling you. It's like,
what does it sound like?
What does it sound like?
Because I think people think God sounds a certain way.
Oh, your own voice. I mean, it's your voice. So it's like, it's just this thing that just keeps gnawing
like
at
a
you.
lack of peace, but not in a bad way.
Absolutely a lack of peace.
Yeah.
And you know you're supposed to do something and you don't do it. So it's almost like a little kid you're being disobedient, really, is what you are.
Amen.
And so and then it'll start manifesting in other ways.
Yeah.
You know, it could manifest physically,
in your health,
emotionally, mentally, absolutely in your health. And you need a good group of friends around you to say, hey, what's going on? What's going on?
Was that part of what made it hard for you because you were just around a bunch of dudes? Or what do you think would have helped you in that season to make better decisions? Despite also like, you know, we're allowed to make bad decisions.
Right.
But like, I assume you're like, hey, I'm pursuing my calling. I'm doing the best with what I know how in the moment. But yeah, did you have, you were surrounded by dudes like 24/7.
True. But this was when I was in LA, and he followed me out there. So it was after he left. Then that was being away from home, having really no. I have my manager, who was, a good guy, but I didn't have that core group of people to say, hey, hey, Julie. And they didn't know the situation, really. I had the people that I worked with. But, I always said LA's kind of, it's a lot 24/7. It's a city that never shuts down. And everybody looks like they came from the same doctor's office, basically. It's just like, and again, when I was in LA too, I would have girls at work come to me and just pour their heart out to me. And here's an example. It was a young girl that moved from Iowa, and she worked in the office. I worked in an entertainment law firm. And so we had every movie star, anybody who was anybody, from Arnold to Sylvester Stallone to, producers, directors, musicians come into the office every single day. She, I think it was on a lunch break, she came to me and she's like, hey, I got this photo shoot. And at that time, of course, nothing was digital, and the only way you could do anything was you had a photo shoot. You had your pictures done. Everybody had their pictures done, right? So everybody was a photographer, and you needed headshots to even do anything, right? So she goes, I have this opportunity, and I'm going to get my headshots, done, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, just something rose up in me, and I said, who is it? Well, I don't know. How did you hear about this person? I don't know. And I said, be careful. I said, just be careful. And she's like, oh, it's good, whatever. I said, I just have this feeling that, like, it may be a headshot. He may want to do your headshot, but I said, I just know of too many of those going bad to where a girl ends up taking off her clothes and then they've got that over you. That's exactly what happened with her. It's exactly what happened with her. The good thing for her, she didn't become a star, but that's what happened. And then they have the goods on you. Now everything's just like wherever you go. But then she was like, oh, she felt shame and she felt guilt and she felt all of this stuff. And so she's coming to me and I'm just like,
yeah. So do you think community is the number one buffer for that? Or what do you think helps people that are feeling pressured, boxed in, or the devil's trying to like dangle a carrot of something involving their ego or involving their calling and really messing up, like the devil works in half-truths, right?
Yep.
So like maybe use the notion of like maybe that person was called to be an artist or was called to be a model, but the devil's going to distort it any way that he can to make a good thing a bad thing.
Yeah, and I think everybody's flesh. It's like you see an opportunity, and unless you have that knower that's tuned in to the Holy Ghost, and you've got one or two people that you can run something through to say, you might want to, look at this. Even then, because I just had a feeling, but she did what she got into the situation and then couldn't get out of the situation. So what you have to do is you have to make up your mind beforehand what you will do and what you won't do. Yeah. You can't, if you're in the situation and you have to make your decision, you're not going to probably make the right decision.
Yeah.
She was in that situation. She hadn't made up her mind and then got pressured into doing something she didn't want to do. So you've got to have one or two. You don't need a whole bunch of friends. People think, oh, I got to have all these friends. I got to have all these friends. No, you can have friends, but you have to have one or two people who really know you, who can speak into your life that you can receive from. Even if it's one, just start with one.
Yeah, you need one that can call you on your crap.
Call you on the carpet and just say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you thought about that?
Yeah.
And then, some people don't have their family to do that. We're blessed that to have people that we can bounce off of. And we've come through, especially you and I, from the teenage years. It's an amazing relationship now, and Allie and, everybody. But not everybody has that. So have one or two people that are like family to you, that know you intimately, that know how you operate, that can help guide you.
Yeah. Okay, so before we move into more of the present, so you got out of this relationship, then you got back in it, and then eventually you had the courage to get out. Because I think there's a lot of single people that are listening, or people that are like navigating what's the right person, what's the wrong person. How did you eventually have the courage to say, like, once and for all, I'm done with this?
You just have to do it. I think fear...
Was there like a sign, or was there a person, or was it just like did something bad enough have to happen where you're like, I can't do this? Or what, did you just wake up one day? Like, what was the moment for you? I know it was like forever ago, but...
I think I just finally snapped out of it. I mean, it was just, I was...
How did you have the courage to do it? Because like you said, fear is a huge component of why women don't leave. Had you been praying for courage? Like, because you when you went back, you knew it was bad, right? You're like, oh, nothing's changed. I have the bad, yucky feelings again.
We also worked at the same place.
Nice.
So that made it extra difficult.
Yeah. That's a word.
Worked.
That's why you don't freaking live with people before you're married. Don't create more entanglements than your covenant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't do things that are more intimate than the covenant that you've agreed upon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think part of it was, yes, I was praying, just like, God, just help me.
Yeah.
You know, like, and again, I felt alone, which again, I didn't have those people. I had people, but I didn't have those people to really speak into my life.
Yeah.
And so I had a roommate that was wild. I mean, I had to bar the door at night with furniture because she had guys coming into the house every night. It was just like, I mean, literally put a big chest over the door so that people didn't come into my room at night.
Wow.
You know, it's just like,
yuck.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
wow. So you just prayed, and God will give you the courage, which He will. I mean, because if you don't have other people, God's going to use the access that you give Him into your life. You know what I mean? And there's so many stories in the Bible of where people prayed for a sign or people prayed for courage, and God made something happen. Because that's who He is. And He loves you, and He'll never stop chasing you down.
And I think it just, a holy boldness just came over me and just said, enough is enough.
Yeah.
And I want to say this, a lot of it's tied to self-worth. And because of something that happened to me when I was younger, I felt like I deserved somebody to treat me that way. And so, but I didn't know that that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that I was picking somebody like that because of how I felt about myself and how I thought I deserved to be treated.
Amen.
So if you don't know your own self-worth, you're going to attract what you think you deserve. So I would say you have to know who you are, even though I thought I knew who I was. You know, I'm pursuing my calling, I'm doing all these things, but yet I was inside, I was like this. I was screaming, really, you know, because I didn't know who I was. And I thought that that's what I deserved. And so it was this conflict of inside and outside and inside and outside. And that, again, is where those people around you can help you, you know, because they can see that when you can't see it.
Yeah. Okay, so the next direction I want to go is, you always have said to us your whole life that the only thing you ever wanted to do is be a mom. But yet you also, like, yes and no, because you also, like, were a rock star and did all these other things. So for a lot of women, but also men that are listening, what is your advice? But let's talk to women first, because it's different, right? Because we have a timeline. So you got married later in life at 31 for a day, 32 the next day. What do you think is the balance, and speak to maybe people in their 20s and in their 30s, or let's say like 30s plus. What's the balance as a woman pursuing your calling, but also being available for marriage? And then one thing that I don't think I've ever asked you is, like, you eventually moved back to Nebraska, which both of us said we never would.
I didn't want to, but I felt that, again, the Lord was like, you need to move back. I'm like, no.
Yeah. Same.
Absolutely not.
Literally same.
I was like, move back. No. And it just wouldn't leave me. And it wouldn't leave me.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to be perceived as a failure. What I would have to move back with my parents in a
have the
small
same
town.
life.
It's just like, what? Yeah. It's like not doing it.
That's actually hilarious. I've never put that together. That's what happened to me with Nashville.
I know. And
Same thing.
once I said yes,
Peace.
absolute peace.
Yeah.
And then everything fell into place.
Well, and so many people are disobedient because their ego too.
Yeah.
Because there is a humility to say yes to God and quote unquote start over. So yeah, okay. So you moved back at what, like 28, 29? Because you met Dad at 30 or maybe 29.
Yeah. No,
Because you only dated for like a year, right?
Yeah, but I did stuff for a while when I moved back. So I moved back.
So late 20s.
Yeah, 27.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you navigate, like you always wanted to be a mom, but you also knew like sometimes it was a season for traveling the world for 3 years. It was a season to go to LA. Like, were you still hoping and desiring to like meet your spouse during that time? Or were you like, hey, this is purpose time. This is calling time. I'll focus on being a wife and a mother later. Like, how did you navigate having both desires, I guess?
That's a good question. I guess I was just doing my thing. When I was on the road with the band, it was all about that. And then when I moved to LA, that's when it was like, ooh.
Yeah.
You know?
Because you were like 25, 24.
Yeah, so I was like, that just started to tug on me, you know? And then I started seeing everybody else get married but me. Like I saw all three of my sisters get married. I saw my oldest sister had been married, and I saw my younger two sisters got married. The same month, the same year, I was living in LA, had to fly back for one, fly back, and then fly back for the other in the same month. And then it was like, well, what's wrong with me? Like, I always wanted to be married. Like, don't have a boyfriend, don't have a, like, can't get a date. Like, what's wrong with me? So then you start that internal dialogue, and then it's like, LA was different because it's like,
same
who
with
do you
Nashville.
date? Like,
Well, because everyone's out for themselves.
exactly.
It's like,
exactly.
ugh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ulterior motives. And it just, that's where the knower comes in again.
Well, and if you don't meet a guy, Landon and I just did an episode, like if you don't meet a guy in church or through a family member or through a community member, what are you going to do? Meet him on a modeling shoot or a bar or whatever? It's like, not that that's wrong, but okay. So,
and I was going to church. So it was.
and did you move back to Omaha or Tacoma?
I moved back to Tacoma, all my stuff, because I had all my, my piano. I had all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, no, can't stay here. And then I came into Omaha, got an apartment, started teaching piano lessons, started singing with another band. And just because I'm an entrepreneur, always have been, you just got to keep landing on your feet. So.
And then you met Dad like 2 years later, singing a jingle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So you just kind of continued to, when you moved back to Omaha, did you get plugged into a church?
I kind of went to some churches, but couldn't really find anything. So that's probably, for a while, I was kind of like, And then my older sister was playing organ at a church in North Omaha. And so I ended up taking that over from her. So basically,
that's how you found Mount Olive.
That's how we found,
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you're pursuing your purpose the best that you know how. And then in walks this
Dad.
Tweedledee. Tell people that story.
I'm singing jingles, which is what a jingle is if you see a product on TV, we probably sang it and sold it to you or got you to buy it, basically. But like Godfather's Pizza, we did all those, a lot of car jingles. I did Wells Blue Bunny, the flavor of the heartland, that one. So a lot of jingles.
Are they from Omaha? Blue Bunny?
No, they are actually from Sioux City.
Oh, I didn't know.
Actually, I think they're from, the account was in Sioux City. And so I would drive up there and do jingles for them too. But anyway, Sound Recorders was a big recording studio. Chip Davis had that here. And so we get called in for jingles. And it was nothing digital at that time. It was all Just basically
Nightmare.
tape. You couldn't, if you made a mistake, you had to do it over and over and over and over
Were they
and
still
over.
cutting and splicing tape back then?
Correct. Yep.
Yuck.
Yep. And so you had to be present. So
Dad walks in and bonks his head.
I heard that this new guy was coming in from Miami. He's supposed to be really good, and everything. And
I'm still thinking too, like, how did Dad make any of these connections? Because
well, you had to submit like a cassette tape for an audition. That's what I did.
Was he just doing that like in the summer because this was between his junior and senior year that you met,
was, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think if I answered an ad like in the newspaper. That's how we used to do stuff.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking of Dad's personality type, and I think it's hilarious that he
I don't know
did that. You know what I mean? Because he's not like a entrepreneurial type.
I don't know.
Love you, Dad.
You know
but
what?
you know
That's
what I mean? Like
question.
that's very forward of something for Dad to do. I mean, granted, he loves music, so he'll do whatever. But
yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. But anyway, so we're in Studio B, which is the smaller studio, and we're waiting. I'm always on time. He's late. So he comes in and there's like step, and a lower ceiling, kind of like, a soffit or whatever. And he kind of comes in, he kind of stumbles a little bit, and he said he hit his head. I'm not sure. But so here he comes, this tall, skinny kid, and we're like, oh, great. I'm like,
and he
oh,
was
great.
a kid, basically.
And they always put the new people with me for whatever reason. People would want to try out, and
She was hot.
Most people couldn't cut it. They're like, oh, I can sing, but going to the studio is a whole different thing because you have to be accurate, can't make a mistake.
Yeah,
and then they would
another
say,
job.
Sing country, sing rock, sing whatever it is, and you'd have to adapt for the moment. And you'd never know what the jingle was. So Sandy, our producer, would go, well, they want something like this. And she'd just kind of sing the melody and you'd have to figure it out. And then you have to figure out the harmonies and whatever. So he's on that side of the mic. I'm on this side of the mic. And he just starts staring at me. I'm thinking, dude, like, no, like, what are you doing? And he's just staring at me. And I'm like giving him these eyes, like, stop, And then Sandy goes, wow, you two really sound good together.
But he was good. And you were like, oh, okay. Like,
no, he was.
Yeah, he was good.
He was good. And
loud.
He didn't stink. He didn't stink. But it was just the fact that he was just looking at me. It was just like, and so anyway, then they kept putting us together. And I think I don't know if he was home for the summer or if it was spring break.
But he was like 21. 21? Could he drink yet?
I don't know.
You're playing at jazz bars. Anyways, he was still in college.
Yeah.
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 And so then you started singing at jazz bars. Then
I was playing in a piano bar. I would play and sing. Yeah.
And you brought him in because your tip jar would go up.
Yeah.
He tried to ask you out. He says a million times. And
he was
finally
frying
said
chicken
yes.
at Baker's in the deli.
He was in the fried chicken section at Baker's.
He was in the deli. He was
But
a
he had a
deli
job.
man with the deli plan.
That's what he says.
Yes.
And then you started dating. And then you got married you got engaged after like 6 months because it was at Christmas, right?
We came home in May. He went back to school in August. So
You got married
we
at
really
Christmas?
didn't start dating until July 4th.
And then you wrote letters every day. You were gone. He was gone.
And then he was gone. We wrote letters and then he proposed at
Christmas.
And
You
got married the next August. Because he was in Italy for the whole month of July.
I forgot that. That was
Touring with a group, yeah.
That was
jazz.
pretty fast. That's kind of like us. You had like a 7-month engagement, 8, fast enough to get all the details together, which I'm sure you just planned everything. And then he came home basically and
everything was planned and he just walked right
And it
in.
rained on your wedding day, which is good luck.
On the morning, and then it was beautiful and hot. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And now you've been married for 35 years. So what were some of the qualities in Dad that even though you guys had a little bit of an age gap and also just experience gap too, what actually attracted you to him that made you willing to date outside of maybe what you thought you were going to marry?
Oh, it was outside everything that I thought I was going to marry.
Yeah. What ultimately sealed the deal for you? Because I think that's where some women are stuck too, is that Lan and I talk about this a lot. They either have standards for the person that they have to marry that they're not holding themselves, or they have like an exact box of like, he has to have brown hair and he has to have this and this and this and this. And they're missing a really good thing right in front of them. Because I've never seen a husband love a person more than Dad loves you.
Yep.
And he obviously is a great choice. And now I'm here. So you're welcome, world. So,
and Landon, thanks you too.
And Landon. Good job.
And now we have Willow.
Willow.
Yes. Yes.
But what ultimately made you say yes to Dad? And what are some of the qualities that, turned something that could have been like a red or a yellow light into a green light for you?
Family was number one for him.
Mm-hmm.
Family was number one for me. Musically, I mean, we just connected on a whole different level, you know, which was amazing. I tell you, when Pastor Jank did our, what's the test? The Myers-Briggs. He had us take the Myers-Briggs, which is like 103 questions. Dad's like, yeah. And I'm like, no. You know, he said he'd never seen two people that were completely the same, except for I was on the introvert. I'm right under the extrovert on the introvert, and Dad is off the chart extrovert. So, which is probably why that works. But he said he'd never seen two people more alike. Because most people say, oh, opposites attract and this, that, and the other. But we were, that's...
Yeah, Landon always say like, that's fine. But also, if you want to adapt that much, good for you.
Exactly.
I don't want to.
No.
I don't want to have to compromise every second of every day.
No.
And put my flesh under because I hate the way you do things.
Yeah.
And you and I are the same person.
And I know. And it's like, people say, well, you know, how do you handle fighting and all that? And we look at each other and it's like, well, we don't really fight.
Exactly.
I mean, in 30s, we haven't.
Yeah.
I mean, we have discussions. Now, I'm not going to say we haven't ever had fights.
Yeah, but we never grew up like, oh, my mom and dad are fighting. Like,
no, but if we did, it was something either, I mean, I could own it or he could own it. It was like a dumb decision or something like that. But as far as like the two of us getting along and being
your best friends,
helpmates, we don't fight.
Yep.
We just, and so that's, I would say if you are in a relationship and you are constantly in conflict, that would be a huge red flag. I would say, if that's what you want for the rest of your life, if that's the type of environment that you want to bring your kids up in, you do you. But, I mean, what would you say? I mean, that's not the type of household you guys grew up in.
No,
you know?
I saw parents who were best friends who would rather hang out with each other than any other person in the world. It's not like you don't have friends or acquaintances, but like, and again, I have one model, so it's not like that has to be everybody's model,
Right.
but like you guys weren't constantly having guys and girls nights separate from your family. Dad wasn't like going to the sports bar to watch sports all the time. And you weren't like going and drinking wine with the girlfriends. Like we were a family and we prioritized family. And I think watching a husband and a wife that genuinely like being together, even if you're dirt poor, which we struggled growing up, you know, and even though, like, if you have family, like, I'll never forget, it was like, when we were balling, we'd have $5 Papa Murphy's pizza nights on Fridays, or we could, like, get drinks at restaurants. You know what I mean? It was like, if you got a pop, we were, like, rich. You know what I mean? And, but we didn't care because it was like, we had a healthy home and we were not perfect. And we can probably talk about in the next episode, like, all of our teenage years, like you had 3 teenagers in high school at the same time. Like that's not easy with 3 very different personalities.
And 3 in college at the same time.
3 in college at the same time in 3 different states.
Yep.
And then Dad was gone for several years traveling for work when you were truly an empty nester. And that couldn't have been easy, you know? But that's where like, why make it harder by being the wrong person or marrying the wrong person and not having the conversations that you need to have to make sure that you're aligned before you enter into a lifelong covenant and create mini yous from somebody that you don't even fully know if you like.
That's the other thing. I think, I know you guys did it too, but we talked about everything.
Yep.
Like,
You wrote letters every day.
Yes, we wrote letters every single day because there was no phone. I mean, no digital phone.
Yep.
He had a payphone because he was in the dorm at the end of the hallway, you know. I'd send him care packages. But But it was just, we asked questions about everything. Because how do you get to know somebody if you don't ask questions, right? I mean, there was no subject that was off limits.
Yep. And that's a huge testament because as simple as that sounds, so many people just don't do that.
Yeah.
Like people have literally walked up to me, Mom, and been like, well, you know, I'm just nervous for who he'll be after we're married. And I'm like, why? Is this a joke?
That should be a red flag right there.
Like, why? Why have you not talked about this stuff?
Yeah.
Like, and it's because they're scared of getting rejected or they're scared of having a conflict. And I'm like, no, you need to know if there's conflict here.
Yeah.
Because when you work through conflict, there's actually intimacy. Like there's emotional oneness and two become one and we should stay one. The devil tries to do this. And when you work through conflict, it actually restores. In the same way that like if you're mad at God and then you finally surrender something to him and now you and God are one again because God's been chasing you and you've been running away. You know what I mean?
I will say too, probably in one area that we're different. Well, we talked about this last night too. He likes Dr. Pepper. I can't stand Dr. Pepper. He said there's probably 3 things
Can't get married.
we disagree on. And I said, really? I was like, he said 2, and then I said 1 more Dr. Pepper. So there you go.
I'm team Dr. Pepper.
But now they have a Dr. Pepper Blackberry or something. I don't even know.
Landon, let's Instacart
Don't care.
Instacart.
But I like to resolve conflict right away. He does not. And
Mom's an 8, Dad's a 2.
So I'm like, I want this. I want to talk about this.
Yeah.
And he's
because you feel anxious until it's resolved, and he feels anxious if you try to resolve it before he's processed things.
Correct. And my tone, even though so I have to watch my tone. Like I'm just getting excited because I'm like, I'm passionate, but I'm not ticked. I mean, I'll tell you if I'm mad. So here's
what you see is what you get with the Swanson women.
Yes. So this is what we talked about too last night. I don't know, we were on this talking about old times. But because what you do is you talk about your relationship, like how am I doing this week? How am I doing as a spouse? How am I doing as a wife?
Yeah.
How am I doing?
And if you can't do that,
how are we doing financially? How are we doing on a budget? How are we doing socially? How are we doing in our spiritual life? Holding each other accountable.
Yep. Amen.
You know, you should do that before you get married too. I should just say, because if you can't do it before you get married, you're probably not going to be able to do it after you get married.
Yep.
But I like to resolve conflict right away. And so he would just say, "Are you mad at me? Are you mad at me?
Oh yeah.
Are you mad at me?"
And you're like,
one day I'm like,
up.
Do not ever say that. It's like, I don't ever want to hear you say it.
If I'm mad at you, I will tell you.
Exactly.
And my face will tell you before I can tell you.
Exactly. I will tell you if I'm mad at you. It's like, so don't say that anymore.
Yeah, that would tick me off.
Oh, exactly. So he was like, oh, okay. And to this day,
where he had come from and his personality type was constantly fighting for attention.
Yeah.
And also, even being an identical twin too. Yeah. It's like, who am I? Am I enough? Am I, where's my seat at the table? What's the shape that I'm going to etch into the world, right? And so his personality type needs affirmation, and there's a ceiling and a floor of every personality type. Our personality type hates being controlled and betrayed. His personality type, the devil tries to eat their lunch in, am I enough? Am I included? Am I worthy? And so again, once we know that, we can say, okay, great. You probably need to give him a little bit more affirmation than some people, but also like, you've got to stop asking this or you're going to piss me off. Yeah. And then I want to withhold affirmation because you're ticking me off. Like, be secure.
Because then you almost feel manipulated too.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's part of where, like, if you can't have those conversations, then you're either just going to drift from each other or you're living in this land of pretending for the kids. And that's where you see people getting divorced once the kids move out of the home, and I'm sure you guys have been married way longer than us, obviously, like even for different seasons, like when you were empty nesters, I'm sure there was a conversation where you're like, what do we do now? Like, it's too quiet in here, We
weren't empty nesters for long because we've always had kids living in the house with us.
Weren't there I think there were 2 solid years that you were for sure empty nesters. And then Dad might've been traveling during that time too. So you had to know who you were in Christ because you can't rely on, but even that you're like, okay, I'm still a mom, but I'm just needed in a different way.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that really quick and then we'll end this episode and then we'll do part 2. But like, how did you navigate different seasons? Let's even just talk about like, okay, you were just married, no kids. Then you had littles. Then you had elementary school. Then it was the middle school years. Then it was high school. Then it was empty nesters. Then it was like adult children. So just briefly high level, because that could be a whole episode in itself and we should do that. Like, how did you specifically navigate who you were as your role and what was needed of you differed as an individual and as a mom and as a wife and somebody who still has a calling outside of that too and is working and doing all that? Like, how did you, and did you and dad have specific conversations when you feel like those were shifting, or was that more internal? Like, how did you navigate that?
Well, we still had a full voice studio, full piano studio, still working full-time, at church, in some various form or fashion through the different seasons. But I say there's grace for every season that you're in. And we used to call it quadrants. It was funny because like when you guys were in grade school, it just seemed like we were always in this quadrant,
Yeah.
And then it's like middle school. Now we're in this quadrant.
Yeah.
And it's
like your car automatically takes this turn.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like and because you guys were all so close, I think there's only 1 year we had one in each school.
Yeah, which would have been when Ian was in 9th grade, I was in 8th grade, and Allie would have been in 6th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
So there's grace for every season, and you have to understand what that grace looks like. So I had 3 babies and 3 and a third years, basically. So that's a lot. But here we are, right?
Yeah. Nothing lasts forever.
No, it doesn't last forever. And so if you can be present in the situation, in the season that you're in, that's really one of the biggest things I would say.
Yeah, because you want it back as soon as it's gone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I noticed that even with the newborn phase, I'm like, I mean, it sucked because I didn't sleep, but also like you could wear them all the time and they always wanted to cuddle. And, so I'm already there even with an 8-month-old where I'm like, okay, I get why people... Like, as soon as your kid gets easy, you're like, let's have another one. Because every phase is special in its own way.
Yeah, like she's, like I told Allie with JoJo, it's like, oh, I want him to walk and this, that, and the other. I said, be careful. I mean, he's going to walk when he wants to walk.
Yeah.
And then once he starts walking, that's a whole different
He's not unwalking ever again.
No, he's not.
Yeah.
And so it's great.
Yeah.
They're going to crawl when they're going to crawl. I mean, you can help, but then they're going to walk when they're going to walk, and just be present in the moment.
Yeah.
Just enjoy the season. And the thing is, I think for a mom is, you mentioned losing yourself. It is easy to lose yourself in those seasons because you are so immersed. If you're a full-time mom, stay-at-home mom, even if you're a part-time, I will say it is easier if you go to work and you just drop your kid off. I mean, I'm not a proponent of that, but if that's what you have to do, it's easier. I mean, I had actually a mom say that to me. Well, it's easy because I just go to work and then I just, but they dropped their kid off at 6 a.m. and picked him up at 6 p.m. And then they went to bed at 7 a.m. So I would just say, what is worth it to you?
Yeah.
Is it worth it to you to raise your kids, or are you okay with somebody else raising your kids? And that's just a decision that individually you have to make.
Yeah, and every situation is different, obviously.
Absolutely.
But I also think that if I can, hot take, and I don't really care if I offend people, like in American culture, we are so selfish today. Like, yeah, I had to come to this realization. It is unfair. Because when you have babies, the husband's life doesn't really change. And if you were a working mom before that, there can definitely be bitterness and resentment that builds up because it's like, well, here I am and I still have a calling and I still have this that I want to do and I'm the only one that has to slow down. And that's where like Landon and I talked about in an episode we recorded earlier, like, well, make sure you marry a man then that wants to make enough money for you to have options.
Yep.
Because that's the thing. If the wife is going to work and be present, it takes money.
Absolutely.
Point blank, period. If you don't want the only options to be send your kid to daycare or be a full-time stay-at-home mom, which again, though, even though that, it's a season. Like once your kids are 5 and they're in school, like you could go to work again or do whatever you want. You know what I mean? So it's like
a short season.
It's a short
season.
And yeah, like you said, do you want someone else raising your kid? These are all conversations that Landon and I have had that we were actually just talking as a group upstairs. And it's like, but would you be willing to sacrifice for your children or else? And hot take, you may not have any business having children if you're just going to neglect them. Now, granted, God, there's grace.
Yeah.
We don't have to know everything. That's not about perfection, but like I have been so humbled since being a mom because it's like,
you're a great mom.
You didn't realize how easy your life was.
Yeah.
Before kids.
Yeah.
And how even, they say, okay, well, there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into marriage. And it's like, okay, yeah. But like you still can pretty much do whatever you want before you have kids. Like with good communication, you can still do what you want to do when you want to do it. Yep. And for women specifically, like you can leave the house and go to the gym. You can go have a night with your girlfriends. You can do whatever you want. Like you really can. Unless you have, I don't know, a needy husband or something that is on whatever. But when you have a child, the woman specifically, I think there's a rebirth that happens and you actually become, I don't know if I want to say like the fullness of who God always created you to be, because obviously not everybody has children and it's not that you're less than in any way if you don't have children. But it's almost like your life goes from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional where you're like, there's a part of you that's like unlocked that was always dormant in you. And now you're like, oh, this is like a whole other side of me that now in my femininity, it is reborn. And so with that, a part of you has to die at the same time. And the selfish part of you has to die real quick or else you're going to be a terrible mom.
Yeah.
And you're going to be a terrible wife. And if you think, and I had to go through this, I had to, the part of me had to die. That was the CEO, boss babe, strong, independent woman. Like I still run a company very successfully, but things had to change. And I had to give up thinking that Landon and I were just complete equals in the way that we were before. Because if I would have expected him to carry an equal weight of time as a father and with the household and with this and with all these different things, we would hate each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it just can't look the same. It can't.
What you just said right there, I think is something that is grossly misunderstood. Where people think, well, okay, I'm married now, so everything's equal. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have equal. I mean, it's just not reality.
Yeah.
It's not reality.
Yeah.
Because men and women are different. Mm-hmm. We are different. We're built differently. We think differently. We're different.
Even just instincts. When you have a child, watch. Instincts. Yeah. Women know what to do when a kid is crying. Men will be asking the wife, what does she need?
And that's okay.
That's
it's
okay.
Just different.
That's normal.
It's just different.
And the men should find a different gear of wanting to provide more, which your good husbands will.
And that's why we need each other, because we're to be helpmates for each other.
Yeah.
But it's not the same thing with child rearing. I mean, there's stats after stats after stats. The importance of a father, the importance of a mother, and how those are different.
Yep.
They're not equal.
But they're equal in importance.
They're equal importance, but they're not equal in I hear so many times it's like, well, here's the wife saying, well, I did this, so you have to do this so that we're equal. Mm-hmm. Why?
Yeah.
That's selfish. I mean,
so selfish.
Or it's like, well, okay, I put in this time, so you have to put in this time. Or I did this, so you have to do this.
Which, first of all, find me a husband that loves when their wife demands anything from them, because that's just going to piss them off.
And with kids are so random. Kids are so, every child is different.
Yeah.
Every child is different.
If you're trying to control, you're going to hate your life real quick. That's something else I had to grow in, and I'm still growing in because it's only going to get worse. Is like, even you could read every book in the world. Mm-hmm. You could go to every course in the world. And to an extent, kids need routine. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
Kids need routine. They need to feel safe. They need to know what's going on. But if you're going to lose your mind every time a kid doesn't follow the perfect schedule because they went to nap at 11:17 instead of 11 and you think you're failing as a parent or whatever, you're going to go insane.
Yeah. You have to be flexible.
You have to be flexible.
24/7.
24/7.
And that will never change.
Yeah.
That will never change.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the biggest thing. And those are conversations, again, that you have to have before you get married. Because, there have been people who married people and then found out that the spouse didn't want kids and they didn't have that conversation. How sad is that?
So sad.
Just have those conversations. You need to know everything that you can. And then, like Dad and I say, we're still finding things out about each other, but not the root and
not the core things.
not the core things.
Yeah.
Just little things. Because it'd be boring if you didn't discover things all the time.
Totally.
Yeah.
But if you can't just hang out with your spouse and go for a walk and have a good time, good luck. Good freaking luck.
We played Yahtzee yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that. That was so cute.
I won by 1 point.
Yeah, and you guys know how to relax together. We always say you need to know how to fight and resolve conflict.
Yeah.
And you need to know how to do nothing and have fun. If you, God forbid, if you lost everything, would you still be excited? Right. Would you, literally.
Yeah.
Would you still be excited to build together? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where I think it's so special to see even the marriages where maybe they got married right out of college, or certainly when they had nothing. And when people have the difference between married couples that have built an empire together versus married someone at the top of their game, and then God forbid they get sick or they lose their company or something happens, and now they don't know how to be with that person without all the bells and whistles, because they were really attracted to what they had way more than attracted to who they were.
I say strip everything away, and then what do you have?
Yeah.
If you take away, now I'm not saying, because money's not bad.
Right, go build an empire.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As Christians, we should be the ones that are building, so we can fund the kingdom, right? For Christ. But if you take all of that away, what do you have as far as a relationship? Think about your best friend. If you have a best friend, why is that person your best friend? Why? Why can you tell that person anything? Why can you just hang out with them, do anything, go anywhere, do anything, be your total authentic self, unconditional love? Why? That's what you should have in a spouse. That's what you should have in a spouse. You should have fun together. You should laugh. You should cry together. You should, it just unconditional, be yourself.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's end there for this episode. Thanks everybody for watching and hanging out with my mom and I. Thank you, Mom. And we'll see you guys on part 2.
Woke up today, smile on my face, may not go my way, still got my faith, so I'll be okay. I'll be okay, I'll be okay. Running our race, just at our pace.